Yeah, so last week's class was really connected to Shavuot, if you recall, because the big idea was that when we study Torah, we are absorbing God and his mind, and he becomes one with us. And who's to tell also what effect that can have, whether one studies Torah with good intentions or with other intentions. But when one studies Torah, that oneness with God creates wonders, whether consciously or subconsciously. That's really the big idea. I suggest we just continue here at the bottom of page 151, like you just said, Margot. The qualities of his mind. Let's start Rabbi Schnauz's commentary here. Let's go. Does anyone want to read? Anyone?
We like Margot to read.
Okay, Margot, you're the...
I'm elected, huh? Okay, I'll read. Okay, the qualities of his mind have also become part and parcel of the concept. Torah study in such a manner becomes nourishment for the soul and its inner life from the giver of life, the blessed infinite, who is clothed within his wisdom and Torah that are absorbed in the soul. When a person studies Torah and achieves an intellectual union with it, he not only unites with the revealed Torah as we understand it, but also with the essence of the Torah, the divine light of the infinite. This is the meaning of the verse, your Torah is within my innards. That is, the Torah becomes like food that I have eaten and digested. It is no longer something distinct from and outside of me, but something that has been absorbed by my body and become part of it.
Right. So this verse is from the book of Psalms, I believe. I don't know. I believe it's chapter 119. But it's V'toratcha b'toch me'ai in Hebrew. Make sure I'm right. No, Psalm 49. V'toratcha b'toch me'ai. That the Torah is within my innards. Now, my innards is my intestines, really. That's the literal translation, b'toch me'ai. Now, what's interesting about the intestines is that indeed, it speaks about, right, the intestines is the digestive part of the body. And in a way, when we learn Torah, it enters our digestive part of the body, so to speak. What does that mean? As he says, that it becomes one with us. You know, there are parts of there are things that maybe we absorb that do not become a part of our body, whether it's perfume oils or whether it's even, I don't know. I'm no doctor, and Dr. Perlo is coming on now, so maybe he can tell us. But there are things that don't necessarily become part of our intestines. The reason this verse is used is because indeed the Torah becomes one with us, so much so that it is digested in us. The Toratcha b'toch me'ai. Now, of course, the other sides to this verse. I remember, as Rabbi Steinsaltz would be very, very forthright and sometimes could be very, very harsh. I remember him referring to this verse in a different way. How so? That some people, he says the Torah enters the stomach, but it doesn't enter their mind or their hearts. And that's a different problem. And that might be yet another side of this verse. I remember sitting with him in a Hasidic Farbrengen. In Hasidic Farbrengens, no bars are whole. And everything he said from the heart. And I remember Rabbi Steinsaltz speaking to a Jew saying, you know what, the Torah that you speak is beautiful. But what we really need to do, I don't know if I should be repeating this or not, but what we really need to do is hang you upside down from your feet, because it seems like all your Torah is in your stomach. You've eaten it well, and you're like a guy eating cholent on Shabbat who wants to go to sleep. What we need to do is hang you from your head, from your legs, so that your Torah can go from your stomach to your head. And that maybe will be a little bit better. Rabbi Eisen, yes.
Far be it from me to contradict or offer a different version, but I'm going to anyways.
Please.
I've always talked, when I speak with people, we always think of ourselves as being motivated by our minds and our hearts. We're romantic, or we're very analytical, and we can figure everything out. But I found through life the most empowering and embracing feature is what I call the Kishka Factor. Okay, our Kishkis. And when you have a great day, when everything's wonderful, when you celebrate becoming a bar mitzvah, what do you have? You have a great kiddush luncheon, right? Okay. I mean, you celebrate.
Yesterday,
Everything's in your kishkis. And in the worst day of your life, what do? You go to the refrigerator and eat the last piece of chocolate cake. Okay, I mean, it's sort of the kishkis are what motivate us and sort of empower us.
Right.
So I would read this in a more positive spin,
right.
that when Torah is within my innards and my kishkis, then maybe my kishkis will come under control and motivate me and enable me to live life more meaningfully and more significantly, you might say.
Right. No, I like that. I like that. The question, I think, is the what happens afterwards. So it's in your kishkas. So you have this kishka feeling, and or they say it's in your gut, right? But what do you do? What do you do with it? I think that's the question.
Well, then you go into the main course, because kishki was always an appetizer in my house. So.
Right. All right. So I think that what Rav Sternz is referring to, right, is that once you have that kishka feeling, do something with it. Bring it to the mind, bring it to the heart, bring it to action. But you're right. It might be the most fundamental feeling and most important one too. But the question, as Rabbi Sternz would put it, right, the most important question of life, as he would put it, as I've said many times, is azma. And then what? What happens afterwards? I remember sitting with a different Hasidic Jew, but the Lubavitcher Rebbe, in many of his discourses, maybe 90% of them, or even more, he would conclude the discourses by saying ve'od ve'hu ha'ikar, which means ve'od and more, and this is the most important. More, this is the most important. That's how he would conclude with the most important line, the most important point. Usually it would be surrounding Mashiach and so on. But there was I remember sitting in a Fabrengen with Hasidic Jew who said that there was someone who sat by the Rebbe's Fabrengens and heard all these discourses in Yiddish, but he didn't understand Yiddish. All he could understand is some Hebrew words that were mentioned. These words, vehod, vehu ikar, happened to be in Hebrew. And that's all he remembered from the discourses. And they told this Jew, don't worry. That's what you need to remember from the Lubavitcher Rebbe's discourses, because ve'od hu ha'ikar. Ve'od means, and what is next or what's more, that's the most important. In other words, what comes after your great emotion? What comes after your spiritual experience? If there's odd, if there's more to it, then that's the most important. And so I think that's right, Rabbi Eisen, that there's the kishka feeling, but that needs to motivate us and propel us to do more. Because if it stays just there in the kishka, then it's almost wasted. Yeah.
It becomes waste.
Becomes waste. That's right. You're right. It stays in the kishka, very, very well said. It becomes waste. Could even become toxic.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. But it's true. I mean, it's true. I think very, very much in life. You know, we very. So tonight we're having our 10th anniversary and with a great concert and everything. And I'm, you know, my go-to is always Rabbi Steinsaltz, and I would ask myself, well, what would he say? I would usually call him to tell him, hey, this is what we're doing, and his answer would always be like after the grand opening of this beautiful building, he said, it will probably be a nice party, it will probably be a nice event, but what will happen afterwards? What will come out of it? That was always his comment. The grand opening, it will probably be a nice event, but what will come of it?
Well, a beautiful bar mitzvah yesterday.
No, that's true. That's true.
Joy and happiness, and a young man that you could really tell was taking the steps. It wasn't just words.
Right. No,
Just
that's true. That's true. No, thank you for mentioning that. It's true.
Beautiful.
Baruch Hashem. A lot of good has come of it, and many more good, please God. But it's the question we ought to remember, because we get so stuck in, let's have this meditation, let's have this spiritual experience, or let's have even not necessarily spiritual experiences, but let's have this good time. Let's go to what happens after this, or even in bigger life questions. Let's get this diploma. What happens after this? Let's get married. What happens the day after the wedding? Let's do a bar mitzvah like yesterday. What happens the day after? You know, Rabbi Sternz would have these common lines that the most important part, I told the bar mitzvah boy yesterday, the most important part of the bar mitzvah is the day after. The most important time to visit the mourners is on the 8th day, when Shiva is concluded. The most important part of the Sheva Brachot, the 7-day celebration after the wedding, is the 8th day. You would always have these lines because it's true. What's left? You know, there's a great line by the Kotzker Rebbe of Nachum Mendel Morgenstern. He has a beautiful, very harsh interpretation on the concluding blessing of the Yishtabach that we say each and every morning. The prayer of Yishtabach concludes with Abocher b'shirei zimra, which is usually translated as God who chooses the songs of our melody. Shirei zimra, songs of our melody. And he would say, no, shirei in Hebrew should be read shiyarei. Same letters, just different vowels, shiyarei. What does this mean? It means that God chooses the remnants, the shirayim, the remnants of our melody. It's easy to sing. What's left after the song? That's the big question. So going back, the Torah might be in our intestines. What do we do with it? Do we let it go to waste? Or do we use it as a propeller to do more things? Rabbi Eisen, yes, please.
I'm wondering, I like the idea of, what's next. I used to tell people the most important part of Yom Kippur is when we wake up the next morning, what are we going to do?
Right.
But I would also suggest I see this 10th anniversary thing spinning it the other way. It's like, look at all the things you do from day to day, week to week, the classes, the services, the reaching out, the bringing people together as a community enabled you to reach that point. So it's sort of, that's the ode of what's being done all the time. And it may be a moment, but the next day you're going to wake up and the same thing's going to go on until you get to the next ode, so to speak. But I would see it as not a moment unto itself, but that's what came from all the other things you do from day to day and week to week and,
right.
and as a congregation.
Right. No, thank you. That's what we do. We do. So you're right. But yeah, we can't be satisfied. I guess that's the point. Can't be satisfied. Never be satisfied. Rabbi Steins would say, Pesach, there's the song of Pesach is Dayenu. It would have been enough. And he would say that Dayenu is not read or sung well. Dayenu, right? Rabbi Stein's take is that Dayenu doesn't come with a period and then it comes with a question mark. Dayenu, would it have been enough? Is it really enough? That's the question.
So the story goes at the Concord, the waiter goes up to the table and greets the family, said, "Is anything all right?"
That's right, exactly. Very good. Very good. Right. Okay. All right, let's continue a little. I mean, unless, of course, please speak to your minds. Anyone? All right, let's continue. Top of page 152 here. Does anyone want to continue to read? No, we'll go back to our default. Margot.
I'll read.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. And as it is stated in Eitz Chaim, Portal 44, Chapter 3, that the garments of the soul in Gan Eden are the mitzvot. The soul's garments are the elements by which it relates to the reality within which it exists. In the physical world, the soul clothes itself in the physical faculties of the body in order to interact with the material reality within which it resides. But in a higher world, in the spiritual reality of Gan Eden, paradise, it has other garments appropriate to relating to that environment. These spiritual garments are generated by the mitzvot a person performs in this world. Ungraspable by our material senses, these garments become, in a higher and loftier reality, the soul garments of the soul, facilitating its interaction with its spiritual environment.
Right.
Okay.
No, you know what? Continue maybe a little bit more because it is connected. Yeah.
Whereas the Torah is the food for the soul, which in this world had occupied themselves in the study of the Torah for its own sake. And as it is stated in the Zohar, Vayekel, page 210. The Torah that a person studies in this world becomes food for his soul in Gan Eden. Unlike the garments that the mitzvot generate, which fill the intrinsic role of relating the soul to its heavenly environment, the soul's food in Gan Eden, generated by the Torah it studied in the physical world, represents what of the supernal reality the soul is capable of internalizing and assimilating into itself.
Right. So there is here, we do find, I mean, as opposed to maybe what we've been saying, that Torah and mitzvot are one, but there are two spheres to the Torah and the mitzvahs, the deeds that we need to, that we are commanded to do in the Torah. The study of Torah nourishes the soul, and that nourishment of the soul stays with us not just in this world, but also in the next world. The point that the Talmud says, "Ashrei mi sheba lekan v'talmudo beyado." Fortunate is the man who comes here to the world to come, and his studying is in his hand. So we come with our Torah study to the next world. The mitzvot are really here not so much to nourish the soul, although they of course nourish the soul too, but they are here not just for us and for our soul and for our fueling, so to speak, but they are here really to better the world. So I would say, I mean, it's a terrible analogy, just because I use the word fueling, but thinking of a car. So I would say that the Torah is the fuel that enables the car really to drive. The mitzvot is the car driving and spreading its light to the world. So they serve the same purpose, so to speak. Both the Torah and the mitzvot not only are godly commanded, but they're also godly fueling, so to speak. But on the other hand, they relate to two different layers of our mission. One layer is to empower our own selves. You can't be a giver if you're empty, as they say, and that's the Torah. But on the other hand, the goal is not just to keep it for ourselves, to nourish just the soul and our souls selfishly, but it's really to then do the mitzvot that are commanded by the Torah by taking all that we took in with the study of the Torah and bring it to the world outside of us. So those are the two layers of the Torah study versus the mitzvot. Now, I would add that it's interesting to note that because in these words of the Tanya, we might think that Torah study is maybe of higher value because it nourishes the soul, while the mitzvot is like that outer garment. But I would add that mitzvah, the word mitzvah in Hebrew, and I think we've mentioned this in the past, comes from the word tzavta or tzevet, which means to unite. And that is because the true unity with God happens specifically through mitzvot. Now, how is that so? Hasidic sages explain, and Kabbalah also explains very in elaborate terms, that when we study Torah, we are uniting with God's mind. When we do mitzvot, we are uniting with God's desire. And that's a deeper level of unity. Think of relationships. If I do that which my beloved wants, then it's a unity far greater than me studying with my beloved or connecting my mind, having a good intellectual discussion with my beloved. So although the mitzvot really serve an outer purpose, they are there to better the world. And because of that outer purpose, we might think that we are less internally connected with God. No, we're wrong. It's wrong. Yes, it does serve that outer purpose, but in a way, by doing a mitzvah, we are connecting to God's internal desire. And there's no greater connection or unity than that. They just serve, again, the Torah and mitzvot serve this dual purpose that are both necessary, of course, for the nourishment of the person, both the soul and the spiritual body, so to speak. I know these are lofty terms, and I hope I was clear enough, but I'll just end this remark by saying that one cannot come with the other. The Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Our Father, said famously that that Torah has to come with, how does it say it? Rabbi Eisen, maybe you can remind me. It says that Torah that comes without mitzvot, mashkachat avon. That's the last part of that verse. It leads to sin. Can't separate the two. They come together. If one just studies and does not actualize his study, then he's defiling in a way the study itself. And it's true also, you can't really do mitzvot accurately, at least, without knowing how to do that. And that comes from the Torah. So it's one big package. They serve two different purposes, again, both for man and for the world. But they are both intrinsically connected and both vitally necessary, both for our growth, our personal our soul, but also for the world itself. Get the verse, whatever. Yeah. I'd love to hear your take, your comments, please. Rabbi Eisen, please. Thank you.
What you're saying piggybacks on something I heard last week from a wise sage and revered rabbi at Yizkor, when he talked about feelings and doing. And you need both. I mean, you said, when I come home and my wife says, how's your day? Good. Does she want more? Yes, she wants more, because she's connecting on a different level, that feeling level, which connects us. But at the same time, I have to do those things in order to have that emotional bond, you might say. Right. So, the feelings and doing are, you can't have one without the other. But I think psychologically, everything I've read over the years say that, if you think positive things, you'll do positive things. When you get up in the morning, what's the first thing you say? Moda ani. I tell people to make a sign and put it over their alarm clock. So when they reach to hit the snooze button, they'll see that on the wall and they'll say, okay, I should be thankful that at least I've got something to complain about. Okay? But at the same time, if we do the right thing, then sometimes feelings will change as well. You told the story a couple times where, someone is mourning and they're at the end last wits. What do? So go out and do a good deed. Go out and do a mitzvah. Right. And then eventually those feelings change. So that they really are part and parcel of the same thing.
Right. I would say there's this big argument, though, right, between, I would say, the intellectual sages of Jewish history, Sefer HaChinuch and Rambam, Maimonides, about if a person doesn't have that feeling, should he nonetheless do that deed? Or should he wait for the feed? Should he work on his feelings and then that automatically will lead him to do the deed? And I think that the prevalent opinion of our sages is that if you wake up uninspired, then still do the deed.
Yeah.
Why? Because as the Sefer HaChinuch puts it, by Eliezer Askari, that achei ha'ma'asim nimshachim ha'levavot. After the actions, the hearts follow. But you're right. Ideally, right, both should be connected. When I do a deed, I should be with complete emotion and passion. And same, that passion and emotion should lead me to doing more deeds. But it's true that they have to come together. In fact, I think that there is much discussion about kavanah, this intention behind the mitzvot. And the Tanya itself speaks about how a mitzvah that is done without emotion, both the love and the awe, ahava and yirah, is like a bird without wings. It might chirp. It might be, sometimes I used to have parakeets where they clip their wings and I felt terrible for them because they act like birds, they sing like birds, they eat like birds, but they can't fly like birds. And their main purpose maybe is to fly. Same with the mitzvah. That's what he speaks about much later on in chapter 39, where it says that these mitzvahs can't really fly, can't connect if they're done without emotion. So we have to have that emotion too. That's very necessary. Yeah. But still, it doesn't mean you should give up on the bird if it doesn't have wings or if its wings are clipped. I kept that bird until it died. Yeah. Or until my kids killed it. I don't know. I still don't know until today. But yeah. you know, the Baal Shem Tov would famously say that the same with prayers. Prayers without prayers, I mean, intention in prayers is even more important than intention in deeds, because deeds, at the end of the day, you gave $5 to a poor person. With intention, without intention, the $5 will help him feed his family. But prayer, you need intentions, you need kavanah. Now, it's very hard to have kavanah throughout the entire prayer. I suggest that people pick their own prayer each and every day to give the entire selves, the entire mind, the entire hearts to it. And maybe it could be Ashrei, and then the next day it could be Shema. Maybe it could be a more minor prayer the next day. But every day we should have our prayer in which we devote ourselves to it completely. But the Baal Shem Tov would say that the prayers also get stuck in the roof of synagogues if they are recited without kavanah. And Rabbi Steinsaltz would often make the comment, being who he was, that the synagogue his roof is packed. It's packed with prayers that got stuck. I wonder if it's true at CBT. Probably not. Everyone prays, of course, with tremendous kavanah. But it's true. There's wings that need to take our actions to flight, and especially our prayers. So we need both. We need both sides. But if we have to pick, then action is usually the one that needs to trump the feelings. You know, just to point out what Kabbalah also says about this. But speaking of, so there are three layers that the Tanya has been speaking about: machshava, dibur, u'maaseh, thought, speech, and action. Thought maybe is also connected with feeling. So you have the feeling, the speech, and the action. What's interesting is this, and that is that, again, if the thought isn't there, or the dibur isn't there, the speech isn't there, I don't feel like speaking godliness, then maaseh has to be there. That's the point that Tanya makes. But speaking of machshava, dibur, and maaseh, they say that in maaseh, we find the words, the Hebrew words, not just of action, which comes from asiyah, but we also have the word mitzvah within it. Mitzvat aseh. They separate the mem. If you separate the mem from aseh, so maaseh is spelled mem ayin sin hey. If you separate the mem from aseh, so you can almost have the acronym of mitzvah aseh, positive action. You can't do that with machshava and dibur. Where is the mitzvah of God? Where is that imprint of God? Not in machshava, not in thought or emotion, not in speech, but specifically in action. In action, in the word action, you find that imprint of God. If God is found in action much more than he's found in the speech and in the thought of man. Yeah. But still, it should come together. It's one full package. So just to conclude with, I mean, unless of course there are more comments, I welcome them, please. No? So just to conclude, today is actually a special day in the Hebrew calendar because it's the 12th of Sivan. The 12th of Sivan is 7 days after Shavuot. Every one of the three major festivals, Passover, Sukkot, and even Shavuot, really are 7-day holidays. Now on Shavuot, you may ask, well, Pesach is 7 days indeed, Sukkot is 7 days indeed, but Shavuot is only 1 day or 2 days outside of Israel. Where are the 7 days? Well, Shavuot had what we called Shivat Yemei Miluim, the 7 days of Miluim, in which they will continue to bring sacrifices in the temple in a way to continue to celebrate Shavuot and to make it a 7-day holiday, even though much of the holiday had been gone after the first day. But there's still the 7-day period that we celebrate until today by not saying Tachanun, for example, the supplications in the prayer and in other ways. So today is the culmination of those 7 days since Shavuot began. So speaking of the culmination of Shavuot and of the receiving of the Torah, we, as Rabbi Eisen so wisely pointed out during his shiur, his lesson during our all-night learnathon, that let us remember that yes, although we are culminating this period of Shavuot, the 8th day counts even more, and the 9th day counts even more, because God may have given us the Torah on Shavuot, especially during these 7 days. But the receiving of the Torah has to happen each and every day. And speaking of mitzvot, let us turn all these great emotions, all this great experience of Shavuot, even during these 7 days, the Shivat Yimam Miluim, into action. Let us not allow them to dissipate into our innards, into our intestines. Let's use them to propel us into action even more so.